Welcome to Our Highest Work, a video series where we are exploring the best ideas for spiritually based business success. My name is George Cow, and in this episode, we're going to talk about what I am discovering as perhaps the ultimate truth, the ultimate spiritual truth about work, about business. Again, this is a spiritual truth, so it may be counterintuitive when you can compare it to the mainstream business world. But if you believe, as I do, that the ultimate purpose of life is not to make a profit or to have comfort for ourselves, but the ultimate purpose of life is to, we might say, to know God and to discover the highest state we can possibly experience in our soul, in our consciousness, then this episode will be very relevant to you. As always, I'd like to start with a quote, and in fact I have two quotes for you today, two inspirational quotes. The first one is by Pearl Buck, and she said, "The secret of joy in work is contained in one word: excellence. To know how to do something well is to enjoy it." And I think that's a very profound statement, which I'll come back to again later in this episode. And the second quote I want to share with you is by the great Martin Luther King Jr., MLK Jr., and he says, "If it falls to your lot to be a street sweeper," let me say it, start over. "If it falls to your lot to be a street sweeper, go out and sweep streets like Michelangelo painted pictures. Sweep streets like Handel and Beethoven composed music. Sweep streets like Shakespeare wrote poetry. Sweep streets so well that all the hosts of heaven and earth will have to pause and say, 'Here lived a great street sweeper who swept his job well.'" I just love the poetry and the inspirational nature of Martin Luther King's speeches. And he is calling something within us. The reason why we are inspired by these quotes is because it's speaking to our conscience. Our conscience is the tool, the primary tool given to us by God, by our higher power, by Source, to guide us along in our life's journey toward the highest good for ourselves and for others. That's what our conscience is. And the more we can sharpen our connection with our conscience, the more we can align our conscious mind with what our conscience is calling us to do, the happier we tend to be in life. Truly happy, deeply happy, not the happiness that comes from eating junk food and having happiness for a few minutes or just a few hours, but happiness, deep happiness that lasts years and decades long. And I know all of us have experienced a deep happiness, and it's because that deep happiness happens when we live according to our higher conscience. And so what Martin Luther King was telling us here is that even if you have such a so-called lowly position in society as a street sweeper, he used that example of a street sweeper. Today we could use the example of even if you are a retail clerk at a store, any other entry-level job you can think about, even if you are filing papers in an office, even if you're doing data entry, whatever the so-called lowest positions of our career society are, even if you are doing just data entry in an office. I don't know if data entry is really a job anymore these days, but if you're just shuffling paper or whatever you need to do to get by, if you're a waitress at a restaurant or whatever entry-level position that might be, do that position excellently. Do that position as if it was an act of worship, an act of worship to God, to Source, to your higher power. Okay, so that's what Martin Luther King and Pearl Buck were saying. If you do that work as if it was sacred work, whatever the thing may be. And this is true for us who have businesses too. In our businesses, we don't just get to do, I don't get to be speaking in front of audiences all day long, which is what I wish I could do, right? Which is what I enjoy doing, which is what I really believe I'm good at. What I also need to do sometimes is to be writing the announcement about this YouTube video. Sometimes I need to be managing the people who are helping me work on my new website. Sometimes I need to be planning my day, okay? But whatever it is I'm doing, if I can do it, if I can take a pause and say, I'm not just doing this to get to the next thing. So that's really key. Am I just doing this to get to the next thing? Or can I take a pause and go, the very work I'm doing now, even if it's sorting out my to-do list for the day, even if it's writing a possibly boring email, even if it is organizing some things on a document, whatever it is that may be boring to me, whatever it is, and I take a pause and go, even this can be sacred. Even this moment and this work can be done with gratitude and with excellence. Because if I do that, then even this work can be done with love. Because if I can do that, then I am truly fulfilling the purpose of work. So let's go into that. What is the purpose of work? The purpose of work in our mainstream society, the purpose of work is to make money, right? Is to put in your hours, okay, so that you can get the paycheck, or to do your marketing, do your work, client work, so that you can get paid. Now, a little bit higher thought about the purpose of work is to serve the customer, serve the client, to make the customer or client happy. Okay, and that's a higher purpose than just to make money, to meet my own needs. Okay. Now, an even higher purpose to serving the customer or client, or you might even say to fulfill the company's mission. Okay, so again, if I were just to be very simplistic and say there are 3 levels of the purpose of work, the first level is to meet my own needs, is to make money, is to put food on the table. And I'm not invalidating these purposes. I'm just saying that, in fact, you might call this a sort of a hierarchy of needs. You first need to meet your own needs, right? Okay. And then the purpose beyond that is to serve the mission of the business. The mission of the business typically is to make the clients or customers happy and to deliver them a good product or service. And even higher purpose to that is to do every activity in your work as an act of adoration. Adoration to what? For what? And this will depend on your own spiritual path. I'll just say my spiritual path, and you can translate what I say to your own spiritual path. So for me, it would be an adoration to God. This thing that I'm typing up, this thing that I'm organizing on a computer, this thing that I'm needing to think through, all this work can be done as an adoration to God, and also as a way for me. So what is this? Let's flesh this out. What does it mean to do this for the glory of God or the adoration of God? It means for me to do the best I can as if that work were done for God. So it's even beyond doing it for the customer or the client. It's as if I'm doing this work as with God as my client, with God as my customer, right? With God as my coworker, my business partner, whatever I'm doing, the work. Okay, so let's actually, that's sort of an overview of what I'm going to be digging more into in this episode. Now, I'm going to share with you the foundation of how I came to this thinking, and may this foundation inspire you as well to think about your work in a deeper way, and therefore bring more joy to your everyday work. And I will tell you, this is why we do this. Why do we want to infuse our everyday activities and work with more adoration, with more worship, with more sacredness? Do you know why? Well, uh, I'll give you a couple of whys. One why is if you do the work as if you were doing it for God, again, translate my words into your own spiritual path, right? If I were doing this as an adoration and for God, I will do this work excellently. And if I do this work excellently and with mindfulness, two things happen. One is I will start to enjoy the work more and more. Studies have shown that what's interesting about true career joy is not that the person, dug into their personality type and look at people who do work similar to their personality, all that stuff. That is a myth, actually. The true studies about joy in work is that people who love their work have actually done it for long enough that they become masters at that work, that they become excellent at it. And when they become excellent at it, they are able to have more control over their work, especially when we're talking about being excellent at a particular work in a particular company or in a particular industry. Because when you become excellent at something, other people take notice and go, wow, that person is a really good fill in the blank, whatever thing you do. That person is really good at that. And when people see you as being really good at that thing, they respect you a lot more. And when they respect you, they give you control. They give you more control over your work. This is true whether you're working in a job or whether you have clients. If the clients know that see that you're excellent at what you do, they're going to say, well, great, tell me they allow you to advise them much more than if they aren't sure whether you're good at what you do. And when you're good at what you do, of course, your business partners take notice, your coworkers take notice, and they give you more respect and give you more control, give you more autonomy over what you do, right? And autonomy brings happiness in our work, as well as mastery. When we see ourselves, when we're proud of our own work, of course we're more joyful. And all of that, of course, generally leads to more profit, leads to more clients, leads to more customers, leads to more people giving you more and more responsibilities that generally means more money, more value to society, right? So that's one why of why we're doing this. Another why, the higher why of why we're doing this. So again, the lower why is we get more respect, we get more money, and we get more business. Okay, and three levels of why. We get more respect, more money. The second level of why is we get a deeper joy that, oh my gosh, I'm so good at what I do, and I have more autonomy over it. And higher why, the highest why of all this focus on excellence in our work and adoration, is it's actually fulfilling our soul's purpose. The point of why you are here in this life, and again, I'm speaking to you from my spiritual worldview. I hope you'll translate it based on your spiritual worldview. And if you want me to translate it, comment below this episode. Which, by the way, I should mention, I call this video series an exploration of the best ideas in spiritual-based business success, because it's an exploration means that I want you to also explore with me. So feel free to comment below the video. Ask questions as you watch this, questions that come to mind, confusions that you have. If you want me to speak to applying this particular concept to a particular situation you have in business, post that. I welcome you to post that below the video. And in fact, below the video, you will find a link to our Facebook thread for this episode. And I prefer if you could comment or post in our Facebook thread, that'd be great, because it's easier for me to comment as a result as well. Okay, so let's go now to the foundations of this thought, and then let's weave this thought more and more, or let's explore this thought deeper so that you have a better impression of how to really do this. So the foundation of this idea comes from the spiritual traditions that have stood the test of time. Now, let me take a pause here and just go on a little bit of a tangent that I think might be interesting for you. I see a lot of people these days following new spiritual gurus, spiritual teachers that are teaching about all kinds of things. One of my clients sent me her guru, her spiritual teachers had this teaching about abundance. And I looked at that teaching about abundance, and I'm like, all right, it sounds good. It sounds good. It looks cool. You know, the design, Chinese characters all designed, and the talk about abundance and how we're all meant to be abundant and all that stuff. It all sounds good. But my question is always, where is this spiritual teacher getting this information from? Is she getting it from her connection with God? And if so, are these principles standing the test of time? So I think, in my opinion, a lot of people are being misled by new spiritual teachers who are speaking things that sound good to them, that make them feel more comfortable, that are giving them more pleasure, but and then of course they're taking their money, and either in the form of donations or in the form of products and services. But it's not. It becomes a business, and that's why I think that charging money for spiritual work is doable, but it's always dangerous. It always needs to be done with a lot of thoughtfulness, mindfulness, and adherence to the proven spiritual principles. Principles and ideas that are still being taught today, that have been taught for hundreds or thousands of years. There's a reason why those ideas have stood the test of time. Let me say this again. Ideas that have been taught from generation to generation, the reason why they do that, if an idea isn't a good idea, if humanity has tested it and found out, oh, it's not really a great idea, it's not going to survive another generation. I mean, we look at today, okay, one example, social media tools, social media ideas, marketing ideas, many of them go away after a year or two, okay? Ideas that stand the test of time are still here for the reason that humanity has tested it and found it to be worthwhile, found it to be true. So I tend to respect ideas that have been passed from generation to generation, tested. In other words, it's been given versions over version over version over version, tested by this generation and then the next generation and then the next generation. It's been tested by millions of people. I trust that idea more than some spiritual teacher who has a couple hundred followers who are teaching things and then charging money for it that make people feel good. Do you see what I mean? So it's fine for new spiritual teachers to have new spiritual ideas, but are they aligned with time-tested ideas? So I'm going to share with you now time-tested ideas about work's ultimate spiritual truth. Okay? So first, let's look at the Judeo-Christian traditions. Both Jewish and Christian scripture, both Judaism and Christianity urges us to work to serve, doing our work to serve God primarily. Okay, just like I said, with God as our customer, with God as our client, with God as our boss, with God as our business partner, with to serve God as in our mind. When we're writing an email to a client, it's not writing an email to a client. It's as if we're writing an email to God. Now, I'm not saying that I do this perfectly. I'm saying that this is an exploration and a practice for me as well, that I'm trying to do better and better. Okay, and a quote directly from the Jewish scripture and Christian scripture, Deuteronomy. I believe it's Deuteronomy 5:6 or 6:5, says, "Thou shalt love the Lord thy God with all of thy heart, all thy soul, and all thy might. Not thou shalt love the Lord thy God, on Sundays at church or when you go to temple, but with all of your heart, all of your soul, and all your might." So every moment of every day is the ideal. Of course, none of us are there perfectly, but if we memorize this verse, love, and again, translate this into your spiritual worldview. And if I could do a quick translation, if you're an atheist, what that means, that God, you can say, for an atheist, God means our highest ideals. So love your highest ideals, okay? The highest version of yourself. Love that idea with all your heart, soul, and might. So in every moment, every day, as you work, try to take a moment and pause and try to embody your highest ideals. Okay, so I'm just doing a little bit of translation for atheists. But for those of us who are theists, for God believers, this is a simple verse to memorize. I'll say more about the Christian teachings because I'm a bit more familiar with that, and a couple of verses from the New Testament that's worthwhile to memorize. And the thing is, we need to memorize these things. Otherwise, we're so easily distractible. Another idea comes to us, another new spiritual teacher, right? If we memorize the ideas that have stood the test of time, we'll keep comparing. Okay, new teachings, are they aligned with the things that have stood the test of millions of people? Okay, all right. Here's Ephesians, the book of Ephesians, chapter 6, verse 7 and 8. Serve wholeheartedly, as if you were serving God, not people, because you know that the Lord will reward each one for whatever good they do, whether they are slave or free. And back then, the slaves, they don't get any reward. They just do the work that their master tells us, and they get to live, right? And so here it's like, serve wholeheartedly in your work, as if you're doing it for God, not people, okay? Because God's the one who's going to reward you. And my belief is that we live life after life after life after life. And this is from Buddhist ideas, right? That the thing you do in this, the good things you do in this life, you will be multiplied. The good that's going to come back to you is going to be multiplied many times, but it's going to be in another life. And you might even say the longer you're willing to wait, the more you're willing to delay gratification, the greater that profit is to you. If you're willing to delay gratification even to the next life and the next life, the profit is so much greater. And so that's, again, counterintuitive to our society, which is about instant gratification. What's in it for me now, right? No. Come back to the time-tested principles of humanity and of spirituality, which is the longer we are willing to be patient for the fruits of something to come to us, the greater those fruits are. Okay? So another quote, Colossians chapter 3, verse 23, 24. Whatever you do, work at it with all your heart as working for God, not for men. Since you know that you will receive an inheritance from God as a reward. Okay, it is the Lord Christ you are serving. So that's that verse. Book of Matthew, chapter 6, verse 20, 21. Lay up for yourselves treasures in heaven, where neither moth nor rust destroys, and where thieves do not break in and steal. For where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. And again, as I said earlier, even if I'm translating it into secular language, what is your highest, the highest version of yourself, the best self you can be, if you could put your treasure there, okay? Put your treasure there. And well, you could even say that lay your treasures in an ideal world that you are working for. If you keep that ideal world in mind, and a world that works for all, including yourself, keep working for that world, then there your heart will be also, and your every work will be an act of dedication, right? Okay, a little bit from Buddhism. Buddhist thoughts about work is to do work primarily as a practice of mindfulness. Work is not primarily for getting money, getting profit, not even getting more clients or making the clients happy. Work is really from the Buddhist perspective, is to do no harm and to do everything with compassion, because the Buddhists know that everything is a stage for one's inner practice to become enlightened. And it takes a lot of practice, right? It takes a lot of mindfulness in day-to-day to reach the state of liberation, right? Okay, let me give you a bit of knowledge from the Hindu tradition. And by the way, Hinduism, I don't know a whole lot about it, but I was just researching a bit, and I didn't know this, but Hinduism is the third largest religion in the world, and possibly the oldest religion known to man. Hinduism, possibly the oldest religion known to man. So remember I said principles tested by time? Well, Hinduism has been tested thousands of years, and it's still with us today and alive. So there's something there to learn from, right? And in Hinduism, there's the concept of karma yoga. And karma yoga is this idea that karma in Hinduism really means action. Action. And yoga really means the discipline of, let's see, yoga is the physical, mental, spiritual practices to transform body and mind. So karma yoga means the discipline of action, which means that you can translate that to be the spiritual practice of action or of work. And in karma yoga, there's a lot of concepts there, but I'll just give you two concepts. One is called nishkam karma, and one is called sakam karma. Nishkam is Nishkam, Kam, and sakam is Sakam. Now let's start with sakam karma. Sakam karma is to do things for their results, to be calculating, in other words, to say, well, if I'm going to do this thing, how is it going to benefit me? Okay, so sakam karma is really about sort of having what they call attached involvement. So being attached, planning, being calculating for what's going to come to me as a result of doing this thing, and being attached to that idea. And the opposite idea of sakam karma is nishkam karma. And nishkam karma is and I'm going to read to you from the Wikipedia entry about nishkam karma. Nishkam karma is selfless or desireless action, and it's an action performed without any expectation of fruits or results. And it's the central tenet of karma yoga's path to liberation, which has now found a place not just in business management studies, but also promoting better business ethics. The modern advocates of nishkam karma press upon achieving success by following the principles of yoga, spiritual practice, and stepping beyond personal goals and agendas while pursuing any action for the greater good. And it's also become well known because nishkam karma is one of the central messages of the Bhagavad Gita. You may have heard of the book, the Bhagavad Gita, which is one of the most well-known scriptures in Hinduism. So nishkam karma is, let me see here. Let me give you a couple of verses from the Bhagavad Gita about this. So this is verse 47, chapter 2. To action alone hast thou a right, and never at all to its fruits. Let not the fruits of action be thy motive, neither let there be in thee any attachment to inaction. So let me just kind of parse the first part of that verse. To action alone, you have a right to do, but never to the fruits. So this is wisdom, the profound wisdom here, in saying that, you know what, you should be looking at just doing your work and doing it with great love, but don't worry about the fruits, and don't even be attached to the fruits, because the fruits are different each time. Let me give you another quote from Bhagavad Gita. Therefore, without being attached to the fruits of activities, one should act as a matter of duty, for by working without attachment, one attains the supreme. Okay, again, without being attached to the fruits of activities, one should act as a matter of duty. And as a matter of duty here means as a matter of worship, as a matter of devotion, as a matter of dedicating this action to one's God. Okay? For by working without attachment, one attains the supreme. And the supreme here is with a capital S. So, in other words, the supreme here means liberation, true liberation, meaning enlightenment, meaning heaven, you might say. Not having to come back, and live yet another life with all of its ups and downs and all of its pains, but to be liberated and fully go into heaven, right? To act without attachment. To know that what we have available to us is action, but not the fruits of action. That's God's domain. Our domain is to do the work for God. God's domain is to say, all right, given this marketing plan that you've implemented, it's going to be successful. No, we of course, as we implement our marketing plan, we do it with thoughtfulness, we do the things, we do it with love, we do it with dedication, we do it with ethics, obviously honesty, and we do it well, okay? And of course, we're doing marketing plan well, the natural idea, of course, is going to, if we do marketing plan well, of course, there should have good fruits, but we don't say, if fruits don't come to us, we curse this work and we say, oh, that was a failure, that was useless. No, we still did that work for God. It's still useful. And whether the clients came as a result of that, okay, that's up to God. And next time we'll tweak our marketing plan so that we're even more excellent at doing it. Okay, and then we'll see what the fruits are. I really liked, there's this there's a quick passage from a website called Krishna Universe, which is a sort of a Hindu website, and it was analyzing this idea, and I'm going to share with you this quote. There is an unknown factor between karma and the result, karma being action. So there's an unknown factor between your action and results that you gain. The same karma or the same action does not produce the same result a second time, even for the same person. And I can attest to this. I have launched programs time and time again, coaching programs, and one launch will be highly successful, and I use the same strategy to launch it again, and it could be a great flop. And I'm like, how come I used the same strategy? I even improved upon that strategy a bit. How come this time it was a flop? And so this is saying the same karma does not produce the same result, even a second time, even for the same person. For a different and continuing on the quote, for a different person, the result of the same karma can be totally different. The result of the same action can be totally different. So what that tells us is, if you've been trying to follow a formula for business success and you're wondering how come it's not working for me, this verse is explaining that. It's because there's a universal spiritual principle that if we get attached to the results, okay, we will often be disappointed because the results are up to God. So even if you're doing the right thing, sometimes you won't get the right results, or sometimes you won't get the results that you thought should have been. That's a spiritual principle. That's the law. That's one of the laws of life. And if we were to translate into secular language, it means that there is such a thing as randomness. There is such a thing as many other external forces, whether it be other people's actions, whether it be, current mood in society, whether it's the timing that you did, or whether it's whatever, the economy. Something's happening in the news that causes someone to think a certain way, therefore causes, there's all these chain of events that finally get to you, and then you blame the result for your own action? No. There's all these chains. You do something, but your action is within this huge chain called life, right? And so in secular language, all we're saying is that to be less blaming of your own action, and if you can't blame or praise the action for producing the result, then all you can do is give the action your best shot, and to celebrate the action, to celebrate the effort rather than result. And an interesting application of this is they've been finding out that when it comes to educating kids, it's much better for the kids' psychological development to praise them for their effort rather than praise them for their results. Because if the kid keeps getting praised for the effort, they get so attached to the. I'm sorry. If the kid gets praised for the results, like, oh, I'm so glad you got an A. I'm so glad you got an award for this assignment or for this project. The kids get so attached to the results that they become more and more fearful over time about not getting those results. But they get praised for their efforts, like, oh my God, you did such a good job in this assignment. I don't care what the grades were, but you worked hard, and that's what matters. Okay, you worked intelligently, and that's what matters. Then the kid keeps growing up and say, you know what, working hard, working intelligently is what matters. And of course, if they do that, chances are the results will be great too. And so the brilliance of this whole idea, the work's ultimate spiritual truth, so it can be said in the spiritual way, or it can be said in the secular way that's now being proven by psychological studies. A couple of resources I will share with you now to learn more about this stuff. Oh, you know what? Actually, yeah, let me share a couple of resources now. One is a wonderful book about career success, how to achieve career success, called So good they can't ignore you. So good they can't ignore you. And it's by Cal Newport. And you can get a really good gist of this book just by searching on Google, book summary, Cal Newport, So Good They Can't Ignore You. And there are many people who have written book summaries about this, so you can get a quick sum. But the book itself is amazing. I'm just starting to read it. It's great. Another book that I recommend to you is called, okay, let me actually do a quick Google. It's called Mindset, The New Psychology of Success by Carol Dweck. Very famous book in psychological circles. Again, it's by Carol Dweck, D-W-E-C-K. The book is called Mindset, The New Psychology of Success. And that book fleshes out all the studies that show that praising kids for effort rather than results in more success in the long term for the child. And you can, of course, go to actually the way to find out a quick summary of this idea from Carol Dweck is if you go to Google and search fixed mindset versus growth mindset. Okay, so these are secular resources for the spiritual ideas I'm talking about. But let me finish sharing with you sort of the reason why it is so difficult, so counterintuitive. This idea of nishkam karma, this idea of doing work as a dedication to God, our highest ideals, and without thinking about the results, is that it's not visible, right? Well, actually, I should say this. It is visible if you realize that what we are observing is the action itself. Our society has so become fixated with results, become fixated with gratification, instant gratification from the results, that's what we keep thinking about. What's in it for me? What's the ROI? What's the return on this investment? Okay, what am I going to get out of this? Okay, whatever you say, our society is so focused on. So stop, everyone, please stop talking about what's in it for me. What am I going to get out of this? And start focusing on the visibility of the action itself. You observe the action and see, am I being excellent in this action? Am I doing this action with gratitude that I have the opportunity to do this action? Am I doing this action with mindfulness and with excellence, right? So one thing I want to say is sometimes people say, well, if I don't do this with result, if I'm working with other people, if I'm just doing things excellently, sometimes I get taken advantage of. Sometimes I get taken advantage of, right? Because other people are thinking about the results and they're being calculating. What we're talking about today is being the opposite of calculating. The opposite of calculating is being devotional to the current moment, right? And when we're devotional to the current moment, sometimes we're being taken advantage of by other people who are calculating, because lots of people are calculating. And what it means to be calculating in the spiritual picture is to be only looking at the short term of what can be measured in this life, even in the next quarter, in the next year, whatever, in the next month, in the next day. It's being extremely short term. It's forgetting that we live life after life after life, or in secular language, it's forgetting that our actions affect the entire world. If we look at the whole chain of reactions, so what looks like being taken advantage of is actually the perpetrator, the person who's taking advantage of you, is gaining a positive result for the short term, but creating profound karmic debt for herself or himself in the long term. And when you are taken advantage of, you are actually creating profound spiritual benefit for the long term. This is completely counterintuitive to our society. But if you look at the spiritual literature, for example, Jesus says, if you get slapped on one cheek, turn the other cheek and let the person slap you. Why would Jesus say that? Jesus was a profound spiritual teacher. Why would it sounds stupid when you slap on one cheek? Because when we get taken advantage of, and yet do it out of compassion, I'm not saying to go out and be taken advantage of. I'm saying that do your work with diligence and do your work with, with judgment, good judgment. But when you are taken advantage of, when you're able to turn the other cheek and say, you know what, I'm just going to keep doing my work with excellence. If you keep taking advantage of me, I'm just going to, of course, I'm going to try to do my work smartly so that I don't get I don't, keep suffering in this way. But still, if I'm taken advantage of, I'm going to just keep going. Is we're building a character and a spiritual persona that brings us a good life in the future, but brings us even a good life now. Because we become stronger, we become happy in any circumstance. Okay, so I think that's enough for this episode. I know it was a bit of a jumble, but you may want to watch this again and kind of get the concepts again. But I really hope that today, and as long as you remember this episode, today, tomorrow, the rest of the week, you will try to take a pause before you do your work. Take a pause and just in the moment, say to yourself, this very task that I'm doing can be a devotional. It can be an act of worship towards God or towards my highest ideals. And as you do the work, notice that you are getting better at it. And as you get better at it, enjoy that. Enjoy that growth. And as you enjoy that growth, you learn how to enjoy excellence. And you learn to enjoy growth, and you will find quite naturally that the results tend to be good over time. So, but whether it's good or not, enjoy the work itself. Enjoy the excellence and the gratitude and the mindfulness of the work itself. So until our next episode, keep your thoughts positive, keep your heart open, and know that you are being cared for and taken care of beyond your wildest dreams. Be well.